why you would use that, especially when one call can
Just a horrible, horrible situation for them.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of TakeaSide, presented by Sided Debates. We've got a great show for you today, but before we get started, be sure to get on to Sided.co or the Sided Debates app to post topics, vote, comment, and engage with other users on the site to climb up that leaderboard for a chance at winning a $25 Amazon gift card. The more interaction your debate can get, the more points you earn, inching you closer to that top prize. Switching into our first debate today, we are going to discuss who will win each of the men's Power 5 conference tournaments. With the regular season completely wrapped up, Carson Shea and Kyle Mathis are going to make their case for each of the conference winners. Kyle, let's hear what you're thinking. Who do you have winning the Big Ten Conference Tournament?
Thank you, Max. I have Wisconsin winning the Big Ten Tournament, and here's why. I mean, yes, one of their best players got injured yesterday in the Nebraska game. Yes, they lost to Nebraska by 1, but Wisconsin, I think that they'll have to play Michigan State, Purdue, and then Rutgers in the championship, and I think Wisconsin will be able to beat all of them and win the Big Ten with Johnny Davis if he comes back.
All right, well, I got Purdue. I know that Wisconsin's good. I think Illinois is overrated. I think Purdue, they've been up and down this season, but I think going into the conference tournament, I think they're going to take it. I would even say Rutgers is up there over Wisconsin and Illinois, but I got to go with Purdue.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the ACC. So I have Duke winning the ACC tournament. Yes, they just lost to North Carolina, but Duke with Pablo Ranchero, he's really good, and I could see Duke just kind of cruising through the ACC.
All right, well, I got to go with North Carolina. They're coming off of a hot win, and I think that's going to give them a lot of confidence. You know, I think they could go beat Duke again, their rivals, and I feel like that win just really pushed them to do better in this tournament, and I think that they're going to go win it.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the next conference tournament, the SEC, and we actually have the same pick here. I have Kentucky, and I just have 2 words, Oscar Tshiebwe,
Yep.
And I think you have the same idea.
Yeah, rebounding is such an underrated part of basketball, and he's the best rebounder in the country. And the way that they dominated against Kansas in Allen Fieldhouse just really made me think, like, wow, like they're one of the best teams in the country. They're definitely going to win this tournament.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind, they are the 3 seed in the SEC, so that's one interesting fact. Tennessee and Auburn are ahead of them. So let's move on to the next one, the Big 12. I have Texas Tech winning the Big 12, and I know this might be a shocker as a KU student, but I think Texas Tech and Kansas will meet up in the Big 12 championship, and I think Texas Tech will get the better of Kansas. Texas Tech beat Kansas at home, then Kansas had to beat them in double overtime at Allen Fieldhouse, so I think Texas Tech will get it done.
Yeah, I'm going with Kansas. I think that it's going to come down to free throw shooting for the Jayhawks. We've been up and down this year with that, but I think that if we're able to do well at free throw shooting, I think we're going to take it. I know that we can't beat anyone in Texas. This is in Kansas City. I think that we're going to win.
Yeah. And the final conference tournament we have is the Pac-12, and this one was kind of up in the air for me, but I picked UCLA to win it, and I do think that UCLA is going to beat Arizona in the championship, and UCLA, they're coming off of a big win over USC, so I just think UCLA is a super good team that made the Final Four last year. I think they can win the Pac-12.
Yeah, I don't think UCLA is as good as they were last year. I think that was just a miracle run. I'm going to go with Arizona. I have Arizona. They've played well all season. UCLA started hot, and they've kind of gone downhill. So I think that Arizona's going to win.
Yeah, well, conference tournaments, they start tomorrow on Tuesday, and they go through Sunday where it will be Selection Sunday. So now we're going to send it to break. When we come back, we have an MLB debate with Jordan and Dylan.
For students searching for a way to stay active in an outdoorsy way, the City of Lawrence has bike trails running in every direction, and with the new bike share program, we can stay in shape as we tour the sights of our beautiful city. Clinton Lake is only a short 30-minute bike ride away from Daisy Hill and has the most incredible sunset location in all of Lawrence. Walking campus may give you the KU calves, but biking can give you the KU thighs. Bike Lawrence today.
Welcome back to TakeaSide. I'm Dylan Vanderveen. To my left is Jordan Ziegler, and today we got a very good debate about MLB. Obviously, the MLB is in a lockout for the first time since 1990. They had a strike in 1994, and during the season, it was fought by the players. That's when the luxury tax came into effect in 1996. And for the first time since then, MLB is in a lockout, and salary cap and salary floor have long been talked about in the MLB. A lot of people, a lot of people outside of the leagues, NBA, NFL, NHL, all have the salary caps in baseball, or the salary caps outside of baseball, but the MLB for some reason does not. And today we're just gonna have that debate. You said you wanted to talk about baseball's cap floor.
Yeah, so I think a salary cap is obviously very important in baseball, but I think a salary floor is a little bit more important because baseball has more of a tendency than any other sport for teams to tank, like massively tank in order to promote a rebuild. However, these small market teams sometimes come from cities where they can't afford to tank without the city being able to strong arm them into relocation. For instance, the Oakland A's are right on the cusp of being relocated to Las Vegas any day now, depending on what goes wrong. And with no salary floor implemented, then their ownership can purposely tank, purposely not generate enough revenue for them to stay in Oakland and then be able to force the team out to a different city. So I think when teams are constantly at threat of being moved from their home city, then that becomes a massive issue for the game of baseball.
I 100% agree with you. I think some teams could definitely tank and they can definitely do stuff like that, but the salary cap in baseball, to me, is a little bit more important because there's teams that are powerhouses that have these radio stations and have these own networks, like the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox. The Cubs are starting to get there as well if their ownership would stop not spending money. But all these teams are like generating so much money that they can spend way more outside of the luxury tax. I mean, you got in 2021, the team that won it was the Braves, who were actually 13th, which is actually like one of the lower teams in salary cap to win it in the last 5 years. But the Final Four, even if you look at that, I mean, the Dodgers were first. They lost in the conference finals. I mean, you got the Braves, who obviously won it, 13th, as I said, the Astros, who lost in the World Series, who were 7th, and the Red Sox, who lost in the American Conference Series, who were in 3rd. And just, I mean, consistently in all those years from 2018 to 2021, there's been at least 3 teams inside of the top 8 in payroll that have made it to the conference series. And it just proves to the fact where these teams are winning so many games and going on over these teams who can't produce that much money because of, honestly, a lot of them is like the poverty cities. I mean, the Detroit Tigers, they have never spent money. Detroit's been a poverty city. As you mentioned, Oakland, as we know from if you watch Moneyball or anything like that, they're a very, very poverty franchise. And having a salary cap floor is important. I think they should be able to, they have to spend some sort of money because, believe it or not, the NFL and everybody else like that has that same exact thing. But it's so low that almost no one nears it. And I think the MLB can definitely do the salary cap floor and implement that, and no one would really notice a whole lot. But the salary cap would draw a lot of interest because these teams like the New York Yankees cannot overflow on payroll and try to win a championship every year.
Okay, I would say that competitiveness is the number one issue here. And while a salary cap, for instance, would bring the Yankees and Red Sox and Dodgers and their power down a little bit, it wouldn't do enough to even out the overall competitiveness of the league. If you have a salary cap, but the Baltimore Orioles are still spending $42 million as a total payroll for a team and $13 million for their active 26-man roster, when Max Scherzer is making $43 million a year pitching once every 5 days, that's not evening out the competitiveness of baseball. You need to be able to force these teams not to purposely tank for 5 years straight and have rebuilds going in no direction. Because then you have teams like the Yankees and the Red Sox, whether they have a salary cap or not, are still going to constantly beat up on teams like the Orioles. And so you need to be able to install this competitiveness, and the only way to do that is through a salary cap. Coming up next, we're going to have Jackson Reed and his Riz rankings on NCAA men's basketball. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll send it to break.
Where you go to college makes a statement about you. This place will become a part of you, your identity for life. The University of Kansas, a great place to be you.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second installment of Riz's Rankings. I'm Jackson Reed, the host of Riz's Rankings. This is my rankings, my rules. You know, we ran through this last time, but I'm going to do the pre-Big 12 tournament, so these are my rankings going into the Big 12 tournament. Number 5, I have TCU. This team has picked it up in recent weeks. They beat Kansas at home. It was great. And now your player to watch for TCU is Mike Miles. He's had a great season so far, scoring 15 points a game, dishing out the ball 4 times a game, 3.5 rebounds, and a steal and a half per game. He's been great for TCU. But their kryptonite is scoring the basketball. They're 84th in adjusted offense, and Ken Pom, that's abysmal. But TCU is good enough on defense to where I think they can stay in games in the Big 12 tournament and especially in March Madness when it really matters. Let's move to number 4. A team that's really kind of skidded in the past couple weeks is the Texas Longhorns. But they sit at number 4 to me. Their player to watch. You could have went a couple ways here. You could have went Andrew Jones. You could have went Courtney Ramey, but I went with Marcus Carr. My reasoning for that is if you watch the Kansas game at Allen Fieldhouse, Marcus Carr was the reason that Texas stayed in that game. Marcus Carr was the energy pulse for Texas. He was great. He scores 11 points a game, gets 3.5 assists a game, gets a couple rebounds too. But what he does on the defensive end of the ball is way more important for what Chris Beard likes, way more important for Texas. So, like I said, they're kryptonite. They didn't end the season well. And they've lost the 3 of their last 6 games, and their last 3 wins were at home against Oklahoma. It took them to overtime. They beat TCU, and they beat West Virginia by 1 point. So not the greatest of wins for this Texas team. So they're coming into the Big 12 tournament on a little bit of a skid, but I have another Texas team sitting at 3, and that's the Baylor Bears. And my player to watch for them is Adam Flagler. He's had a great year for them, all Big 12 first team. He's been great. 13.8 points per game, 3 assists a game, 2.5 rebounds per game too. And also, he's great on the defensive end of the ball, which is why Scott Drew's team is so good. Their kryptonite, though, is Texas Tech. They've lost to them twice. And I understand that it's hard to beat a team 3 times, especially in March, especially in a Big 12 tournament, and especially if these two teams somehow see each other in March. But Texas Tech has Baylor's number. Mark Adams has had Scott Drew's number this whole season. Both games were double-digit losses for the Bears. So Texas Tech, if they find each other in the second round, which I expect them to, could be a little bit of trouble for Baylor. Number 2, the Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas is such a hard team to get a pulse on. Obviously, their player to watch, Ochai Agbaji, Big 12 Player of the Year, probably going to be first-team All-American, 19.8 points per game, 5 rebounds a game, 1.7 assists. The problem with Ochai Agbaji and the problem with Kansas, if Ochai Agbaji doesn't score, Kansas looks like a very bad basketball team. Texas should have beat Kansas at the Fieldhouse handedly, but somehow David McCormick was able to will Kansas, and Jalen Wilson also had a great game. But Kansas is kryptonite. The state of Texas, 4 of their 6 losses in the entire season have came against schools from Texas, and they have 0 wins in the state of Texas in 4 tries. That's TCU, that's Texas, that's Baylor, and that's Tech. All 4 times they made a trip to the state of Texas, they've came home empty-handed every single time. You can't play every single game at Allen Fieldhouse, and I understand that this game is metaphorically in their backyard, and this tournament's in their backyard in Kansas City, but they're going to run into the eventual Big 12 champion, the Texas Tech Red Raiders. This team, what's not to like about this team? They can score, they can play defense, they've beat the big teams when it matters, and they're good at home, and they're good on the road too. Their most impressive game to me was that loss against Kansas, and I understand, well, they lost in double overtime too, but it was a 94-91 game. It was an instant classic game, and this guy went insane. Bryson Williams, he's your player to watch in the Big 12 tournament for Texas Tech. 14 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, an assist, and he shoots 42.7% from three-point. This Texas Tech team is well-rounded. They can shoot. They can defend. They can get downhill. This Texas Tech team is well-rounded. Mark Adams should have won Big 12 Coach of the Year. I'm not really sure what that's all about, but this is my Big 12 champion. I have Kansas and Texas Tech in the championship game. Give me Texas Tech by a final score of 85-80. That's all I have for you. We will be right back after the break with Blake and Maya on whether Caitlin Clark should stay or should she go.
A lot of our waste ends up discarded in the environment, causing pollution, but we can help to reduce this pollution by recycling. There are many recycling bins on KU's campus. And when you're not on campus, take advantage of these bins offered in many retail stores. You should also try to reduce your use of plastic by using these refillable water jugs. Our actions have a huge impact on the environment, so make sure to do your part to keep it clean.
Welcome back. For our fourth and final debate, I am joined by Maya Peterson and Blake Sevenbergen to debate whether or not Caitlin Clark will transfer away from Iowa this offseason. Clark has been on a tear this year for the Hawkeyes, but will she transfer to give herself a bigger brand? With the new NIL deal and the NCAA, players and athletes all over the country are able to create money and create big brands for themselves. We've seen this at KU with Jalen Wilson. We've seen it with Christian Brown. They come up with their own brands. But will this affect the transfer portal this year for Iowan Caitlin Clark? Maya, what are your thoughts?
You know, I honestly think it's only right that talking about Iowa's best, we start with the true Iowan, which I just learned that's what you call people from Iowa. So I'm going to let you start off on why she should stay.
All right, I'm going to say this for Caitlin Clark and why she should stay. One, Caitlin Clark is the best of the best. She is the face of all basketball in the Midwest. She is the face of the state of Iowa athletically. She's from West Des Moines. She played at the biggest high school in the state, and she came to Iowa and as a freshman and a sophomore has put up the best statistics in the country, bar none, hands down, is the best player in America, averaging 24, 8, and 8. Her team is number 8 in the country right now, and their entire starting five is coming back next season. Why would you leave a situation like that?
See, this is the thing. First off, I can't get into if she's the best player in the nation right now.
It's not a debate.
That's a different debate. But in a sense of where do you want to be in 2 years? Do you stay, and then she's putting up 40-point games, she's doing all these things to make sure that her team can win, but doesn't that get tiring at some point? Don't you have to learn how to play with some of the greatest players? Don't you have to be challenged every single night? I think that Caitlin Clark has to bridge out a little bit. She's been in Iowa her whole life, which we've said, but Big Ten is a mediocre conference when it comes to women's basketball. In order for her to be at the trajectory level of a Paige Beckers, of a Leah Boston, of a Sabrina Ionescu, she has to get out of this conference. So that's my reason of why she should transfer. And I have a couple of potential options for you. I honestly think you're going to like my options.
I'm going to dislike all of them probably.
Okay. Okay.
Hit me with the first one.
All right. First one, we can go ACC or we go SEC. Let me know where you want me to start.
Let's go ACC first because I know what you're going to say.
Okay. ACC has very competitive plays. I think my first option is going to be Duke for the simple fact that, first off, she can't go to a team that already has this great starting five. They already got their star player. They know what's going on. She has to go to a program that's kind of rebuilding and can give her a space to feel. Duke has a new coach, Carol Lawson, who is absolutely amazing, worked in the NBA, played in the WNBA, coached the Olympic team. She's star-studded of a coach. Coming to Duke, she'll be playing with Celeste Taylor for another year, Shide Wilson, a great freshman, and they have a great freshman class coming in as well. She's going to be competitively challenged on the court and off the court. And if she wins or not, I think that's the thing of winning a conference championship is great because she's been able to do that at in the Big Ten. But you want to make a true run in March Madness and grow as a player.
Thing at Iowa. I have a couple comments on what you said here. So,
win the whole, wait,
give me 1 second.
Give me 1 second for our viewers.
Yeah, Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes can win the entire thing. If things fall the right way, it's March Madness. You never know. But let me say this. You said Caitlin Clark needs to go into a rebuilding situation where a team doesn't have a star player because she's not a star player.
No.
Okay, you said she needs to go somewhere rebuilding without a star player.
No,
that's exactly what you said.
What I meant was she needs to go to a place that doesn't have the top player, as in like a Paige Beckers or a Leah Boston. She can't go to South Carolina or UConn. She has to go to a team that actually is looking to rebuild and already has 4 players and maybe 6 players, depth to a bench. Really, yeah. That's what I'm saying, depth to a bench.
We can both agree that Paige Beckers has changed women's basketball forever, right?
As anyone from UConn does, Diana Taurasi.
Yeah, okay, so let's say Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark has changed the sport as we know it as well. I'm scrolling through my Twitter on any random given day, and I see a video of a little girl that is fired up to watch Caitlin Clark play basketball, and it's daily. I mean, Caitlin Clark is a transcendent athlete. She's one of the faces of women's basketball.
Okay.
And with Duke, they're not even ranked. Like, this program has no tradition women's basketball-wise compared to their men's program. And why would you leave somewhere to go somewhere that doesn't have the best players in the country necessarily when Iowa's entire starting five is returning next year? I mean, and she has McKenna Warnock and Monica Sedana, who are already really good basketball players. I mean, this Iowa team is no slouch. They're number 8 in the country. There's no reason to leave a team next year that's probably going to be preseason top 5 with their entire roster returning.
Now, here's the thing. that little girl watching and ready for Caitlin Clark to play, Caitlin Clark is a part of a generation of players that are changing the face of women's basketball and what that's going to be. I'm not just going to give that to Caitlin Clark just as a one person.
No, it's not just Caitlin, but she is one of the leaders.
That little girl is not going to not be fired up if Caitlin Clark decides to leave Iowa. She's still going to be like, woo! Caitlin Clark, she gets
you don't know Iowa fans,
So you're saying only Iowa?
No. She's
fans
nationally
are
known.
fired up.
But
I know,
you
that's what
say
I'm
like
saying.
the
So
recognition
that little
she
girl,
gets in
no matter
Iowa,
what,
she's gonna be loved forever.
She's gonna be loved forever wherever she goes. But this is the thing: you can't make decisions based off of people. You have to make decisions for yourself. Right now, if the WNBA draft was happening now and Caitlin Clark was a senior, she's obviously going top 3, top
number
5.
One
She's
or
not
two.
going number 1 or number 2. Let's not get into that debate either. Ryan Howard and Alyssa Smith are definitely 1 and 2. That's already been decided. But in 2 years, it's going to be her against Paige Beckers. We're going to see a list of players. Anyway, but if she stays at Iowa, I'm afraid that she's going to get into a slump. That's my concern at staying at Iowa. She had 46 points against Michigan. Great, right? Yeah. Lost by 8. She had 43 points against OSU. Great, right? Lost by 4. She had 30 against Northwestern. Great. Lost by 8.
That was
22
okay.
against Duke. Lost by 15. Duke, the only reason why they don't have a tradition is because it's the first year for Kara Lawson, and she's building that tradition. That's the thing. Like, the only reason why I think she's going to stay at Iowa is for the simple fact that she's from there. But if she wants to actually grow as a player, be competitively challenged every single game, she has to move into a conference that's going to challenge her. I bet you.
There's 4 top 10 teams in the Big Ten.
When she goes to March Madness, guys, they're going to shut her down. Every time she's actually been a part of competition, when she played against Maryland, which is a top-ranked team, she only had 19. You're not putting 40 points up against an actual
She had
top-ranked
38
team.
against number 6 Michigan a week ago.
That was a week ago, and it was a really bad game for Michigan. So that's one instance out of the entire season. But if she goes to the SEC, you really think she's going to put up 40 points?
Yes.
You really think she's
she
going
is
to
the
put up
best
30?
player in college basketball. She's the best scorer in college basketball.
No, I'm so sorry.
Obviously, we're going to have to agree to disagree, Maya.
That is true.
Caitlin Clark, I still believe, is the best player in college basketball, and I don't think she leaves Iowa with the future that she has built for that program. But obviously, we're going to have to see what happens this offseason. So, Max, back to you.
Thank you so much for tuning in for today's show. Before we go, be sure to create your own Sided account to be able to post debates of your own, as well as to comment and vote on others' debates. Along with that, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at TakeaSideKU for weekly live streams and clips from our show. Our Twitter will also be where we're going to have some different Sided content for you weekly. But that's all the time we have for today. For all of us here at Take a Side, we will see you after spring break.